Okay, as is our custom, we're going to begin with a 10-minute meditation. Although this morning, I'm going to give you some specific instructions to prepare us for some meditation we're going to be doing later in the morning. So let me just run those instructions by you before we begin, and then we'll proceed. I ring the gong once to let us know when the meditation is beginning, and twice to know when it's over. So the instructions are, first of all, get into your posture, your meditation posture, and focus your attention on your breath. Just let your attention ride your breath. You're not trying to control the breath. You're just letting the breath do what it naturally does. It comes in, turns around, goes out, turns around, comes in. If it wants to go fast or slow, let it do all that. Just let the attention ride your breath. And when you notice that your thoughts, particularly your thoughts, have captured your attention and have taken it off into some little story or some little set of ideas, notice that's happened. You're no longer paying attention to the breath, and allow those thoughts to self-liberate. You just look right at the thoughts and they will self-liberate. You don't have to do anything to them. They naturally will self-liberate. And then rest in that space of pure consciousness awareness that opens up for a moment. There's no thought. Just rest in that space. And then a little while later, more thoughts will arise and they'll catch your attention and they'll carry it off. Just look at those thoughts, let them self-liberate, and then return your attention to that space of consciousness awareness, out of which all thoughts, all phenomena arise, and to which they all pass away. So you're not trying to get rid of thought here. It's very important to understand this. In fact, if you spend the whole meditation and not one thought arises, you failed. The purpose of the meditation is to actually see how thought works and how thoughts form into a chain, how they capture our attention, take us away from the here and now, our presence in consciousness, and take us off someplace into imaginary land. So that's the purpose. So if that happens to you, you've succeeded. Just look right at the thoughts, let them self-liberate, and return to that space of consciousness awareness until the next wave of thoughts comes along. Okay? So this morning, I want to talk to you about the Bhagavad Gita, this this wonderful ancient Hindu classic spiritual text. Not a very big book, but an interesting thing about this book is many spiritual texts are written by and for monks and nuns. They're aimed at people who are already have renounced the world. They're external renunciates. They're living in monasteries or hermitages or whatever. And the Bhagavad Gita is written specifically for householders. The whole message of the Bhagavad Gita, the whole teaching is about how to take a householder's life itself as the spiritual path. So we at the center, most of us are householders, I believe, and very appropriate for us here. But there's something I have to warn you about, and that is that the society in North India 2,000 years ago was quite different from our society, different social values. In any case, you don't worry about the details of what's socially responsible 2,000 years ago. We still have social responsibilities if you're going to be a householder. So that's what we want to focus on. So the book is the form is a dialogue between a warrior named Arjuna and his charioteer Krishna. And the book is actually a section of a much bigger epic, the Mahabharata, which is like a Homeric epic. And so this is just one little chapter of it, basically, this one little dialogue, but it can be and has been read as a standalone work. So you don't necessarily have to read the whole Mahabharata. And in the beginning of the Gita, they tell you kind of what the background is. And it begins, actually, it opens on the eve of a great battle between two sides of a family, an extended family, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And they have divided up, and they have all the allies from their North Indian society on one side or the other. So it's the whole culture, the whole society is divided and about to fight this battle. And Arjuna is the great Pandava warrior. And he looks over the battlefield, and he sees on the other side family members, friends. This is like a civil war, and it's going to be a just horrendous fight. And even if they win, there's going to be so much killing and slaughter of people and friends and so forth. It's just going to be horrendous. So he despairs of this. He throws down his weapons and he says, I'm not going to fight. He just falls into despair. Now, we, on the eve of a great presidential election, and our country is very divided, and probably more so than, at least in my lifetime, I've ever seen, bitterly divided in many instances. Maybe you have actually family members on the other side of what side you have. And you probably feel your side is just as Arjuna felt his side was just, it was right. That wasn't a problem. But it was so horrendous thinking about this, and the results were not going to be happy either way. And our presidential election is not going to just heal everybody and solve all our problems at once. The divisions are still going to persist, obviously, and so forth. So you may feel some despair. I'm getting a sign here flashing. My internet connection is unstable. You hear me? Yeah. Okay, Tom. If you can't have problems on your end, let me know. Okay. Anyway, so you may look over the situation on the eve of this great presidential election, and you may despair as well. And you may feel like, I'm just done with politics. I'm moving to Tahiti. I'm going to become a beachcomber or whatever. So in the Gita, at that moment when Arjuna has thrown down his weapons, his charioteer Krishna reveals that he is the incarnation of God, of the Supreme Lord. The Bhagavad Gita means the song of the Lord, of Brahman, consciousness itself, the absolute. And he's an incarnation. He's come here to teach, actually. He comes periodically to teach humans, but he's come here to teach specifically Arjuna. And he says, you must fight. This is your duty. You are a warrior. That's your role in life. That's your position. But I'll show you how you can fulfill your responsibilities, your social responsibilities, uh, in such a way that they become a path that leads to union with the divine. So today, Arjuna is still speaking to us. He's, even as I said earlier, even though our society is very different and what we consider socially responsible actions very different, we can still learn from Krishna's teachings as it applies to us. And particularly at this moment, it's essentially that we're faced with the same situation that Arjuna was faced with 2,000 years ago. So what is the fundamental teaching of the Bhagavad Gita? The basic teaching, and you'll hear this said slightly different versions, but anytime anybody wants to sum up the Bhagavad Gita, you'll usually hear this teaching. You have a right to your actions, but not to the fruit of your actions. You have a right to act in the world, a socially responsible person, but not to the fruit. So what does that mean? It means that as householders, we need to fulfill our responsibilities, but we shouldn't be attached to getting good results for ourselves instead of bad results for ourselves. Because if we're attached to that, then we're going to suffer. We're going to fall into a cycle of suffering, actually, a bondage. And I'll give you an example, just one example. Let's say you have a job, you're at work, and you're working really hard, and you're working to get a promotion for yourself, to get more money, to get more status, more prestige or whatever. So this is the fruit. This is the results of what you're doing. You're hoping to get this promotion. Well, if you're attached to that as a goal, as a reward for your efforts, and you don't get the promotion, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer big time. You're going to be angry. You might feel betrayed. If your colleague gets the promotion, you're going to feel envious. You might feel humiliated. You worked all this time and you have nothing to show for it. You're going to feel like a failure, a loser. So you're going to suffer. That's suffering. Now, the interesting thing is, even if you do get the promotion, it's going to set you up for future suffering, because you'll get the promotion and then you feel good temporarily. You feel proud and you'll have this extra money to spend a little bit, but quickly it'll wear off. And so you'll have to get more, another promotion, more money, get ahead more. And eventually you're going to run into a failure. You're not going to get the results that you were attached to. And so you're going to suffer. But more importantly, you're going to be caught up in this rat race of spending your life pursuing ephemeral goals, success followed by failure, followed by success and failure, all of which is ephemeral. And in that process, you're going to lose track of who you truly are. You lose track of your true identity, which is happiness itself. It doesn't need to be attained. It's just already inherently happy. So this is the big picture of what happens when we're attached to the fruits of our action. So here's what Krishna says about someone who lives this way. Pitiful are those who, while acting, are attached to their actions' fruit. And he advises instead, without concern for results, perform the necessary action. Surrendering all attachments, accomplish life's highest good. So this is very much directed at another way of living rather than renouncing. This is a typical way of spiritual seekers at some point often renounce householders' life and go off because they realize this. You're caught up in this circle of suffering, and you want to just break all that. And Krishna's saying, no, do what needs to be done, but just don't be attached to the fruit. Don't be attached to the results. So Krishna accepts the teaching. It's a great teaching, but he says, he complains, this is not so easy to do. And Arjuna accepts the teaching, and he tells him, I understand the teaching, but it's easier said than done. So Krishna says, okay, I'll teach you 3 yogas, 3 disciplines that will help you attain this ultimate being able to live in the world without attachment to the fruits. So the first one is inquiry, the yoga of jnana yoga, the yoga of inquiry. And the heart of it is to just simply ask the question one way or another, who am I really? Who am I truly? And you just keep investigating, make an inquiry into that. And if you do, it'll lead you to discover that you aren't some little self. You're not some egoic I. You're not the doer of action. And here's what Krishna says. Always and everywhere, acts are done by the states arising in primal matter. A man totally confused in his self-consciousness, though, imagines I act. So do you imagine that you are acting? You know, I read this on my path. This is one of the fortunately, I got this book early on my path. And I read that when I read that specific line, and I thought, what's Krishna talking about? Of course I act. But he's saying, you believe you act, you perform all these actions, you're totally confused. So either I was really confused, and or Krishna was just plain wrong. But I had enough humility to try to investigate this. So you can look into it. You make an inquiry. You watch how actions are done. You watch yourself when you think you're doing things. Can you find a doer in there? And the testimony of all the mystics is you won't find a doer. You'll never find that. You won't find this little self. What you might find is your true self, your true nature. Anyway, the second yoga is bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of devotion. And the basic practice of that is simply to make everything you do it for God, do it for some form of the divine rather than doing it for yourself. So here's what Krishna says about that. Arjuna, if you want to be truly free, perform all your actions as worship. Dedicate yourself to me. Performing all actions for my sake, you will surely achieve success. So just in any activity, ask, am I doing it for myself or am I doing it for the divine? Whatever form of the divine you appeals to you. At work, you're sending a text message. Am I sending it for myself so I can get a promotion, all that? Or am I sending it for the divine? Am I sending it for God? Because this is where God put me. This is the work he gave me to do, or she gave me to do. And so that's why I do it. You're at home cooking a meal. Who are you cooking it for? You're cooking for yourself, or you're cooking for the divine? You're going to make the meals as delicious as you can. This isn't about ignoring good cooking. This is about actually improving your cooking, making the best meal you can. You wouldn't make a meal for your beloved that's a crummy meal. So it's actually been honing all your skills. You're out walking your dog. You're going to pick up your dog poop. Who are you picking up for? You're picking up for the divine, the beloved. And, because if your neighbor comes along, your neighbor is an incarnation of the beloved, just like Krishna is an incarnation of the divine. And the only difference between Krishna and the rest of us is we don't know it. Krishna does know it. But that doesn't mean it's not true that your neighbor comes along and steps in your poop. That's God stepping your dog's poop. So you pick up your dog's poop for the divine, for God. So here's what Krishna says. Focus on me at all times. You will overcome all obstructions. But if you persist in clinging to the I sense, then you are lost. So this is a way of dissolving that whole sense that I'm in here doing everything for I, me, and mine, and so forth. So send the focus out, the dedication out, the service to the beloved, to the divine. And if you do that, you pick some form of the divine to do that, eventually you realize the formless essence of the divine without form. Here's what Krishna says. By devotion, he comes to realize the meaning of my infinite vastness. When he knows who I truly am, he instantly enters my being. So it's this realization of oneness with the divine. You surrender yourself, your little self, until there's nothing left of it, and then who you truly are shines out just instantly. And then the third yoga is karma yoga. That's the yoga of everyday action. And it's coming back to this idea of fulfilling your social responsibilities without attachment to the fruit. Karma yoga means action, and so it's your social action for the things you do in the world without attachment to the fruit. But the point is, you do them wholeheartedly. You throw yourself into these actions, into these activities completely, without anything left over. This is very much this pure Zen activity that Hiromi talked about so beautifully last Sunday. Chopping wood and carrying water without any ulterior motive. That's it. If you're chopping wood, you're chopping wood, nothing else. If you're carrying water, you're carrying water, nothing else. So you're wholly involved in the action itself. And Krishna describes what an accomplished karma yogan is like. Pleased by whatever comes his way, outside the realm of opposites, free from selfishness, even-minded in success and failure. Even when he acts, his acts do not imprison him. So this is a way of acting without this bondage of being tied to the cycle of coming back in success and failure and whatnot. It's pure activity, pure action. So these are the three disciplines that Krishna recommends in the Bhagavad Gita. This is basically what the Bhagavad Gita is about. The Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. He also talks about meditation, although he doesn't call it a specific yoga, but he talks a lot about developing concentration, meditation, and he just assumes everybody's going to do that. It's not some special yoga. This whatever you kind of practice, you do whatever yoga you do, you need to have that concentrated ability to have concentrated mind. But whatever it is, any of these paths, any of these yogas, these disciplines will take you to the same place. They all end in the same place. All roads lead to Rome. And here's Krishna again. That disciplined man with joy and light within becomes one with God and reaches the freedom that is God's. So that's what this whole path is about, freedom. So what does this all have to do with us today? Well, again, here we are on the eve of this great presidential election, just like Arjuna. And we look out over our country, and it's divided between the red and the blue. And Tuesday, we are going to have the election, and shortly, hopefully, they'll decide one way or another, or shortly thereafter. And hopefully, if you're eligible to vote, you've already voted. You've done your civic duty, or you're going to vote on Tuesday or before. And so then, how can we practice detachment from the fruit of the action? You voted. You've chosen what you think is the right side, and put your ballot in. That's fulfilling your social responsibility. Now, what's going to happen next? That's where the rubber hits the road. So I thought we would do a little meditation, a meditative rehearsal of how we can go through this without being attached to the fruit of our action. Okay? So why don't you get in a comfortable posture again? And I'm going to give you some guided meditation in the bulk of this. But let's start with doing what we did in the beginning here, focusing on your breath to begin with, just to calm the mind, calm the attention, and watch the breath. And when your thoughts arise and carry your attention off into some story or whatever, notice that, Look directly at those thoughts, allow them to self-liberate. You're not pushing anything away here. That's very important. It's just you're practicing detachment is neither pushing away nor grasping. That's the spiritual definition of detachment. So you're not generating more thought and keeping that story going. You're just letting it dissolve away, but you're not pushing it away. You want to experience that. You want to experience how that story actually creates a kind of world, an imaginary world that you get sucked into, and then poof, let them self-liberate, and then you're back to this awareness, this conscious awareness out of which all thoughts, all phenomena arise and pass away. So we'll do that for a few minutes, and then I will start giving you some guidance. Okay? So here we go. Okay, now close your eyes and imagine as vividly as possible that your candidate loses the election. You tune in to hear the concession speech. Imagine what your candidate might say now. You create your own little concession speech. Now, how do you feel hearing about it? Sad, bitter, hopeless, depressed? Now realize that you're suffering because you've been attached to having a good result from casting your ballot. But that proved imaginary. There was no good result. It was your imagination that concocted that outcome. So allow all thoughts, the emotions, the attachments, just to self-liberate and rest in that infinite space of consciousness awareness out of which all phenomena arise and pass. Realize this consciousness is your true nature, always present, always free of whatever fleeting actions and results take place within it. That's who you truly are. Now, keeping your eyes closed, imagine as vividly as possible that your candidate wins the election and you tune in to hear the victory speech and listen to what your candidate might say. Now, how do you feel hearing it? Relief, joy, elation, maybe a bit of gloating. Realize that you're happy because for a fleeting moment, the good result that you had imagined actually came about. But realize that this result itself is ephemeral. The country's still divided. There's going to be social and political turmoil ahead. This feeling of elation and joy isn't going to last. So allow all thoughts, emotions, and attachments to self-liberate. Now imagine someone on the opposite side who's suffering because their candidate lost, just as you would have if your candidate lost, who's feeling all the things you would have felt: depressed, bitter, hopeless. Can you feel compassion for them, for their suffering? Now allow all thoughts, emotions, and attachments to self-liberate and rest in that infinite space of consciousness awareness, out of which all phenomena rise and pass. Realize this consciousness is your true nature, always present, always free from whatever activities and results take place within it. Krishna says, turn your mind to me, devoted to me, doing your work for me, bow to me. You will come to me. I promise it to you surely. I love you. And for those who have ears to hear, the Gita and any authentic teaching is just that. It's a call of love for us to come home to our true nature. So that was my talk for the morning. A little rehearsal to prepare us for the great struggle that's coming up, and to give you some ancient advice about how you might handle it. Any questions or comments?
Hi, Joel.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much for all this important information to help get us through this upcoming time. My question is, though, about part of my practice that came up when we did the first meditation, following thoughts back to their source. And what I have been working with in that is when thoughts arise, I have been identifying thought and going back to my sacred word. And then I am allowing that to liberate.
Right.
So am I adding an unnecessary step, or short-circuiting the process somehow by going from thought to word to letting go of that?
Whatever works for you, it doesn't matter. I mean, you could just, if you're doing, let's say somebody's doing a mantra practice, just Om. Just take one with Om, Om. Well, this is the first thing you have to do is be able to focus on Om and not be distracted right away, you know, so you focus on Om, but then you just allow Om to take you back to where did it come from? Where did Om come from, and where's it disappearing to? It's the simplest practice in the world, and it's a wonderful practice. And so you don't really need all the thought thing. If you're just focusing on Om, you can forget about that. But whatever works for you. If it works for you to recognize the thought, come to Om, and then follow Om, do it.
Okay.
Do it.
Okay.
There's a story about Shanti Devi. Let me just tell you, there's a story about Shanti Devi. He was a great Tibetan, well, actually, he was Indian, I think, Buddhist master, and he had a hard time learning to meditate because he couldn't find an object he could meditate on. The breath didn't work for him. Mantras didn't work for him. So finally, he found the horn of a yak. You know, like a yak horn. He could, for some reason, that worked for him. It wouldn't work for me, but it worked for him. So there at some point you get the instruction, but then you adjust it to see what works for you. So
Okay.
it really doesn't matter whether you could say Coca-Cola, 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 and follow that.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Okay.
it's whatever your attention most easily goes to and stays on, so it can really just feel. It's not even observing. We talk about observing. That's too crude in it. It's that's a feeling. It actually is better. Where did it come from? Where is it going to?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing there, but that's nothing there is, and that's where the darkness is. That's where the richness is.
Yeah. Well, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Good. Let's bring the formal part of the morning to a close. And until we see you again, practice surrendering attachment to the fruit of your action, especially this week. Coming up, excellent time for juicy practice. So anyway, until we see you again, peace to you all and good practice.